As part of our meditation this evening, these words from one of the greatest scientists and physicists in the world, Albert Einstein. The finest emotion of which we are capable is the mystic emotion. Herein lies the seed of all art and all true science. To know that what is impenetrable for us really exists and manifests itself as the highest wisdom and the most radiant beauty, this knowledge, this feeling, is the core of the true religious sentiment. He or she who no longer can pause to wonder and stand wrapped in awe is as good as dead. It means the eyes are closed. Albert Einstein, speaking about the mystic emotion. Where do we come in touch with that? Only when the mind is quiet and we go within, deeply within, do we come into direct contact with something that is beyond time, space, name, form, beyond time and space. What is that? That is our origin. When we return there, we find what we have always been seeking: natural happiness, natural peace, natural beauty, natural power and love. We shouldn't waste any of these opportunities. We need them all. So now, in this really sacred space, where our great Guru and other great Gurus have sat, and so many have meditated and found peace. In this sacred space, dive deep within. Let go. Have a carefree attitude. And just watch what happens when you step outside of the body-mind entity and witness all that is around you, all that is within you. Watch and feel from second to second. I have to tell you that I usually, almost traditionally, offer one program every silent retreat of Gita. It's a favorite topic of Karuna Devi. She loves the Gita, and all of us do. But I'm hesitant to offer it on Saturday evenings because it really should not be only the English translation. It should go hand in hand with the chanting in Sanskrit. And that's what we do for the silent retreat, for that particular program. So it's not my fault. I didn't want to do the Gita tonight. I had chosen something else, But it's 9/11. 9/11 beckons for Vedantic answers. It needs answers from the great Vedantist, because it brought too many questions and too much pain and misunderstanding and confusion. And I remembered when that thought came to me that the only program this evening to respond to 9/11 would be program from the Gita, because the main theme of the Gita, according to our great teacher, is do not grieve. Why? That will be presented in chapter 2, a section that has that verse in it about grieving for the wrong things and not grieving for the right things. We tend to do that. I remembered a possible reason for chapter 2 being selected, because as I told the afternoon group, I came to Sri Brahmananda in 1963. Really, I think he came to me. It was like a mutual coming together. And during the first year especially, maybe the second also, I just sensed, as I said today, that if I weren't careful, I would be consumed, I would be swallowed by that one. That he wasn't going to leave me alone until he had me trusting these teachings completely. But occasionally during those early years, the first 2 years, I was resisting being swallowed. I didn't want that. I felt I would lose my independence, when really what Sri Brahmananda and all the great masters are trying to do is make sure that we end up independent, not reliant on anyone for our freedom or our joy. That's the role of the gurus. But when he sensed I was upset with the teachings or the ashram or himself, he had one advice to give me, only it came more as a command, because I was on my way to becoming a very long-term disciple, and he said he knew me from many lifetimes, and that I always gave him trouble. He said, I never trusted easily, and I'd had a difficult childhood, so I had reason not to trust. Anyway, his advice to me, or command to me, when he sensed I was out of order, holding back, reluctant to continue, he said, read chapter 2 of Gita, and read it again if you don't understand or feel any release from what's troubling you. And read it again. Read it until you feel released. So I did. And it was magical, because I tell you truly, the minute I felt that release, the phone rang. Honest. I have someone who can testify, Marvin, because he was there. I would come out and I'd say, I feel much better. I don't think I have to read that again. Ring. Who was it? Hello, you're out of depression? The Gita tells the story of Arjuna and Krishna. Lord Krishna. Arjuna represents us, coming in a state of absolute depression. I won't say who, but one of our senior people said he felt to her like he was going through nervous breakdown. Not only depression, but any minute he would lose full control. Even the way he spoke to Lord Krishna was kind of disrespectful. He was advising Lord Krishna why he should agree with Arjuna when he said, I'm not going to fight anymore. I'm not going to fight. Those words from Arjuna meant simply this: I'm tired of fighting in this world. I don't believe in anything anymore. I don't believe in the wars. I don't believe in the duties that I have. He had duties as a Kshatriya, as a warrior, like one of our armed service troops. And here he comes saying, that's it. I'm not even going to listen to you anymore. I'm retiring. I'm disappearing. I'm pulling out. Signing off. Sayonara. He's leaving. And in chapter 2, we hear Lord Krishna's response to any of us saying, I'm not going to try anymore. My health isn't good. My life, my career, nothing's working. I'm not going to meditate anymore. I can't tell you how many times I've heard that from people. I'm just not going to meditate anymore. And I'm not listening to the guru. And I don't believe in gurus. I just heard that last week. I don't believe in these gurus. If I believe in them, it's because they've made my life better. And my life is horrible right now. So why should I believe? Why should I trust them? I won't attempt to answer. I'll let the Gita answer for you. But first, a statement by Mahatma Gandhi. And I mentioned this afternoon that if you visit his home where he lived, his ashram, his home, you find on the nightstand only one book, the Gita, the Bhagavad Gita. And this is a statement that he made that is in the Bhagavad Gita as one of the commentaries. When disappointment stares me in the face, and all alone I see not one ray of light, I go back to the Bhagavad Gita. My life has been full of external tragedies. If these tragedies have left no visible, no indelible scar on me, I owe it all to the teaching of the Bhagavad Gita. Mahatma Gandhi was imprisoned 17 years of his life, off and on. Although I can't say that too sadly, because he said those were very good years that he was in prison. Nobody bothered him. His relatives didn't disturb him. And that's when he did his best writing. They gave him plenty of paper to write. So there are people who look upon imprisonment in different ways. Some people feel living in this world is living in a prison. And they found their refuge by, I don't know who it was who told the story that there are certain people who love prison because they get their food, they have company, they get out to watch television, do exercising, they don't have to pay rent. They're in there, and when they get out after 5 years, they commit a little petty crime to go back in. One of our teachers, sounds like Osho, doesn't it? Must have been him. So this testifies to the power that is in the Gita for each one of us. We just have to know to return to it. Fortunately for some of us, we had a living guru who based many of his programs and his commentaries on the Gita and the scriptures, Upanishads, and went back to the original Sanskrit, and his Sanskrit teachers now can do the same. So when they offer programs from the Gita, you know they're not making up anything. They're going directly to the original Sanskrit and translating from there. That's the great boon Gurji left in the area of Sanskrit. I don't know of any other ashram or maybe even any university where there is such an in-depth, deep connection to Sanskrit as there is in this ashram. So having said that, I'm going to read an excerpt from Gurji Sri Brahmananda's commentary on the Gita, which is very powerful, because this is a day of grieving all over. They're grieving in Europe, they're grieving in Afghanistan, in Iraq, in Iran, all over the world, in India, because this was a blow against freedom. This is a terrorist, but this isn't a country's blow. This isn't Islam. This isn't Germany. This isn't America striking out. This is terrorism going on. And yet, the central call of the Gita is grieve not. That's Gurji's first statement. If you're grieving today, is that Tara on the steps? I don't want you on the steps, Tara. I want you here. Can I invite you here? I won't ask any terrible questions. But it pains me to see you there. Sarat, he's used to it. Sarat sleeps on nails. It's nice to see you here. But I was absolutely moved to read these words of Gurji tonight. I haven't read them before at the ashram, because this is something that was written many, many years ago in the 60s. I certainly haven't read them since Gurji's passing in 93. His first statement of this excerpt is, the central call of the Gita is grieve not. To be above all fear and to be blissful through an active, conscious realization of one's divine nature. That's what the Gita claims to teach. I'll say it again. The Gita claims to teach that we must be above all fear. We must be blissful through an active, conscious realization of one's divine nature. Insistence is laid on friendliness to all. That's a tall order. Friendliness to all. That means compassion to all, knowing that if people are misbehaving, if people are filled with hatred and jealousy, it's not their fault. That's their conditioning. We had an expression in a clinic where I worked, if they knew better, they would do better. And sometimes it applied to the therapist also. If they knew better, they would do better. When we were angry at them for whatever reason, or the administration, we were told the same thing. If they knew better, they would do. If we knew better, we would do better. We know from our past conditioning. That's what's behind our service, and that's behind our bad behavior as well. The chief aim, this is still Gurji, the chief aim of man in life should be to acquire that exalted state of mind which is imperturbable, which is ever peaceful, which is free from grief and the pairs of opposites like hate and love, pure, impure, sin, and what is the opposite of sin? Virtue. Thank you, Tara. I knew I needed you up here. Sin and virtue. Funny, I remembered sin, but not virtue. But I'll read it again. It's so beautiful. It's so clear. We're only looking at 2 paragraphs. The chief aim of our life should be to acquire that exalted state of mind which is imperturbable, ever peaceful, free from grief, and free from the pairs of opposites. Acquiring which acquiring that exalted state, acquiring which man becomes an instrument of God, and divine energy pours constantly forth through him or her. This is called liberation or perfect freedom. Knowledge, that means the end of knowledge, unselfish action, service to others, and one-pointed devotion that our life sometimes seems to present. Just the last statement. These are the means by which liberation is obtained. By means of knowledge, we have to study, we have to gain understanding by listening, by applying the teachings of the enlightened ones, all of them. That's why we read from all enlightened masters at this ashram. Gurji trained us to do that. He introduced us to all the enlightened masters. So we need knowledge, we need study in the beginning, certainly. Unselfish action. Unselfish action. We have to apply these teachings in our everyday life through unselfish action as much as possible. At least we should keep in mind that that's one of the means for our attaining freedom. And one-pointed devotion. Knowledge, unselfish action, service to others, and one-pointed devotion are the means whereby this liberation is obtained. So many times when we serve, we do volunteer work, and it's not appreciated. We come away one evening and say, I'm not continuing. These people just don't understand the sacrifice I'm making to work in this volunteer agency. They don't understand how hard it is for me to travel from Yonkers to northern Westchester to take part in a hunger drive. And people get discouraged. And it's a big shock when they hear they're not serving anybody. They should be just grateful there are people to serve. And it's possible for them to serve them. And if it's not possible, here's another thing Gurji taught us. If we don't have the time because there simply aren't enough hours in the day to volunteer, at least in your mind, serve the people you don't like. You know how to do that? You tell me. What's a way to serve somebody you don't like? Or who doesn't like you? Yeah, Spencer. That's a good one. Love them, but it's very hard to do. It's much easier to say. If you can't love them, Gurji says, pray for them, meditate for them, wish them all kinds of luck and success and prosperity, but far away. That was Gurji's, you know. But you say, but far away. But if they can't go far away, then love them even when, as Spencer says. But he meant wish them well. Because we have to understand, if we had their genes and we had their circumstances of their life, their conditioning, who would we be? We'd be them. That's the only difference, distinction. Their heredity, their genes, and the circumstances, situations that they encountered that changed them either for the good or not good. And if we keep that understanding that it's nobody's fault, that people are doing the best they can under the circumstances, and we wish them well, there's one other step. Wish them well, pray for them, love them, try to like them, understand them when they're with you, but when they're not with you, Gurji advised, forget about them. Drop them. Because otherwise, the mind, the ego can twist. So I'm not going to comment anymore. these words will work on you. They're already working on me. I can feel them. They're reminders of what we know. And now straight to the Gita. I'm going to be watching the time. I did promise you a story of alchemy, Litsu, called Litsu and the Sorcerer, and it feeds right into this program. Amy, your mother's still all right? Amy, is your mother still all right? Yeah? Okay. Doing better. We're very powerful here. Okay, I just saw you, so I realized. This is chapter 2, the section that is called Dr. Radhakrishnan's translation breaks the different messages of each chapter into sections, and he named this section the distinction between self and body. We should not grieve for what is imperishable. Did you hear? We should not grieve for what cannot be destroyed. And yet we do. Now listen closely. This can change your whole view of life, your whole view of tragedy, what tragedy really is. Here is Arjuna coming and saying, I'm sorry, I'm devoted to you and you served me well. Lord Krishna was his charioteer and Arjuna was the warrior, bedecked with medals for his bravery. And he says, since this is a civil type war, he said, I'm not going to fight against my own family members, against my uncles and teachers. Even though I'm a Kshatriya and I'm supposed to do that, I'm not going to do it. I'm just not going to fight. And again, what he means by that, on the psychological plane, according to the translation and commentaries that Guruji gave, is that when we first enter into yoga and it becomes our way of life, we're doing it often at the expense of the feelings of our family members, our relatives who don't understand what we're doing, who feel alienated from what we're doing, and they feel cut off. They feel rejected. It wasn't only my family. I hear it from many people even today. They're coming, they're saying their parents can't wait till we get disillusioned about this. They're hoping we'll leave after a while. And it feels sometimes as though it's a rejection of the religion of their parents, of their family members. And some people say, I can't hurt them. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to come and live in an ashram. I'm going to live in this apartment they built for me. And Guruji, when he heard that, Guruji, another lifetime? I have to chase you again next lifetime. That's why I have a stick. I'm chasing you with my stick. Because we're pulled back out of compassion. We're pulled back out of attachment. So here we go. The Blessed Lord said to Arjuna, Thou grievest for those whom thou shouldst not grieve for. And yet you speak words about wisdom. Wise men do not grieve for the dead or for the living. And then there's a quotation, the Gita is full of, especially Dr. Radhakrishnan's translation, because he was a great scholar. And he quotes from Plotinus. Murders, death in all its shapes, the capture and sacking of towns, all must be considered as so much stage show, like dramas. So many shiftings of scenes, the horror and outcry of a play. For here too, in all the changing doom of life, it is not the true man, it is not the inner soul that grieves and laments, but merely the phantasm of the man, the outer man, playing his part on the boards of the world. Sounds more like Shakespeare rather than Plotinus, but it's Plotinus. It's not only the Easterners who think like this. There have been many enlightened, including Shakespeare to a certain extent. He had to be enlightened to write as he did. This is verse 12 of chapter 2. Never was there a time when I was not. This is Lord Krishna speaking. And he represents pure consciousness, absolute awareness. Never was there a time when I was not, nor thou, nor these lords of men, nor will there ever be a time hereafter when we all shall cease to be. Now, usually when the teachers or I offer this as a study program with the Sanskrit, we talk about what is meant by that. We can understand that Lord Krishna never ceased to be as pure consciousness, but he says, nor these lords of men, nor will there ever be a time hereafter when we all shall cease to be. What he's speaking about is this. Until the cosmic process ends, this is Dr. Radhakrishnan, until the cosmic process ends, the multiplicity of individuals with the distinctive quantitative contents persists. The multiplicity is not separable from the cosmos. While the liberated souls know the truth and live in it, the unliberated ones pass from birth to birth, tied by the bondage of works. The bondage of works means past actions, past activities, or past karmas. What is it that is always present, has always been present in the past, even in unrighteous wars? Gurji said something that shocked all of us. He said, in 3,000 years, there have been 5,000 wars. And some of you, in different forms, have been in unrighteous wars. And most of us, he said, if there have been 5,000 wars, you can bet that we were born in some country that was involved in an unrighteous war. So is there any wonder that it comes back? There is a law of cause and effect. And that's the answer he gave me when I asked my first and last question of him. My first question was, how can there be a God that allows innocent babies to suffer and to be killed in a bad way? Because I was a child in the Second World War, and I knew the stories. And many of my friends had the same question. He said, you're asking about babies? I ask you a question. Do you believe in reincarnation? I said, I don't know. I don't understand it. He said, well, I do. And I tell you, these babies were not always babies. These babies have old souls if they find themselves in these circumstances. But he said, nature is very kind. Babies die almost instantly. They don't suffer. But the souls have to reap what they have sown. So once you understand that babies, that as you were once a baby, and now you are an adult, these babies, other lifetimes were once adults that caused some injury to others. And it was like the skies opened up because it explained why so-called innocent people seem to be suffering, and yet his statement and others who were enlightened were that there are no innocent victims. There's a law of cause and effect. It's like, well, they call it prarabdha karma. It's like an arrow, they say, that's been already shot by our past behavior. The arrow goes forth, and we can't take it back. It's already done. But what we can do is make sure that when that arrow lands as our karma, that we don't have to suffer. As Sri Brahmananda had a stroke. It was his body's karma. He had a very bad, massive stroke. But we didn't see him suffer because he lived beyond the body-mind entity most of the time. I realize I can really be here another 6 hours. I better stop. I have Gurji's problem. Just talk. And Srimati, you and I have the same problem. This is Srimati Saraswati, who knew Gurji, and she came this afternoon, and she said, I won't talk, I'll just listen. 3 times she had to talk, because the stories were so pungent of her times with Gurji. She had to tell, and we were happy to hear them. All right, now, this is the wisdom of the Gita. As our soul, or as the soul, passes in this body through childhood, through youth and age, even so is its taking on of another body. The sage is not perplexed by this. He's saying that our soul has already gone through infancy, right? You were once an infant, right? The body is embodying the soul. You were once a teenager, right? I'm talking to new people. Some of you were once 21. Not yet, Spencer, right? Not yet. 24. Oh, so you know how it was to be 21 and a teenager. I know. So we know what it is to have a 17-year-old body, a 2-month-old body, a 27-year-old body, some of us, a 67-year-old body. Different bodies, but the soul, the awareness of I, has always been the same. I am. I have a 17-year-old body, a 37-year-old body, a 40. I was never reluctant to leave any of those bodies. I never thought about it. I always felt I belonged in a 40-year-old body, even when I was 17. 40 felt just right. 41, I don't know about that. But I never grieved when the body changed and the soul remained the same. And yet all these wise teachers are saying, if we didn't grieve upon losing that beautiful 20-year-old body or 14-year-old body, why on earth are we grieving losing the 92-year-old body, which is full of aches and pains? It can't run upstairs the way it wants to. It can't even walk the way it wants to. Why are we reluctant to give up that body? The Gita is saying. Listen again. As the soul passes in this body through childhood, through youth, teenage, and old age, even so is its taking on of another body. The sage is not perplexed by this. The human being makes himself fit for immortality by passing through a series of births and deaths. This is what we must do. We must go through many lifetimes until our desires are completely let go, released. It's only desires that pull us into manifestation again. So we go through a series of births and deaths in order to make ourselves fit for immortality, meaning not to be born again if we don't want, not to go through this. Sri Nisargadatta said, when someone asked, could I know your age? And he said, I've been suffering in this body for 84 years. He was very kind of fresh. But what a statement. I've been suffering in this body. Because the only time we're not really suffering is when we're out of the body. When we're in deep, dreamless sleep. I just saw a little 4.5-month-old baby today. And for a while she was smiling and happy. And then the father made the mistake of wiping her mouth. 4.5 months, that was the end of her good humor, and she screamed in the meditation room. It was the end. So even babies, if they're identifying with their body, are going to be unhappy at 4 months. But if we break this identification with the body, we could be 98 years old like Rabbi Gelberman, and as happy as a 4-month-old baby when it's not being disturbed by the parents. All right. The Gita, written more than 5,000 years ago, is so applicable to our lives and to our suffering. If we have only this one book, as Mahatma Gandhi had, at the end of our lifetime, and it's a book that is our guide, that's all we need. Other people like I Am That, they like Guruji's textbook of yoga psychology, they like Krishnamurti, but as you're listening, there are new people here. Who's hearing the Gita for the first time tonight? Raise your hand. Raise it high. I'm going to keep my eye on you. Because if you feel a transformation occurring tonight and it's the first time, it will tell me definitely you're the ancient students of the Gita. It may seem like you've never heard it, but if you're moved by it and changed by it, you've heard it. Contacts with their objects. O Arjuna, this is Lord Krishna still speaking. When we have contact with objects, it gives rise to a feeling of cold and heat, pleasure and pain. But they come and go, and do not last forever. Cold comes and goes, heat, pleasure comes and goes, pain comes and goes. They come and go, and do not last forever. These learn to endure, O Arjuna. The word endure comes up very often in the vocabulary of great gurus, great teachers, because there comes a time when we have to pay back a debt, something that we've done before and now we have to make good. And it looks like our life becomes the book of Job. Nothing comes out right. Even the good things we're doing end badly. Guruji said, wait. Wait. Whatever contracts has to open. He said, if it's very difficult, just endure it. And that comes up in the Gita, and it comes up in Guruji's writings. He has something about what happens when nothing works. Meditation doesn't work. The scriptures don't work. Witnessing doesn't work. Friendship doesn't work. Love doesn't work. What happens? Endure. Wait. Wait patiently. But wait with a trust. The trust should come from these readings. He says, pain and pleasure do not last forever. These learn to endure. Sometimes we're having so much bliss and so much pleasure, it hurts because we know it's not going to last and we don't know if it's ever going to come back again. So there's always that feeling of pain even with the most exotic of pleasures. And this is Dr. Radhakrishnan. There's no obligation to be pleased with success and pained with failure. We can meet them with a perfect equanimity. It is the ego consciousness which enjoys and suffers, and it will continue to do so, so long as it is bound up with the use of life and body, and is dependent on them for its knowledge and action. Meaning as long as we're identified with and dependent on the body-mind entity to give us what we want and need, we're heading for suffering. But when the mind becomes free and disinterested and sinks into, means just let go, Sink into that secret serenity. I like that. It's a secret serenity. We don't know it's there. It's the biggest secret of our life. That within us is a serenity that we're looking for outside. It's a secret. One of the best kept secrets in our life. That we don't have to go anywhere. It's so beautiful. I'm always moved by just going back to this chapter. When the mind becomes free and disinterested and sinks into that secret serenity, when its consciousness becomes illumined, it gladly accepts whatever happens, knowing full well that these contacts come and go and are not itself, although they happen to it. That's why when we came over to Gurji shortly after his stroke, we had tears in our eyes, and we said, "We're so sorry, Gurji. We're so sorry." And he said, "Why?" I said, "Well, we never, it just seems not right that you had the stroke or a heart attack, whatever was before." He said, "Who said I had stroke? I never said I had stroke. Body had stroke, but I'm taking care of it. Don't worry. I never had stroke." They all talk like that. All the great enlightened ones. The body had a stroke. The mind's having a nervous breakdown, but they're perfectly all right. They say mind is having very depressing thoughts. But I am perfect. I'm having no thoughts, so I'm free of that worry. They see the mind having thoughts, and they know that's very bad for the mind, so they give it something to eat. They watch a movie. They take care of the mind at this point of their lives. But we have to work a little harder. We have to go back to chapter 2. Any problem we have, whether it's a problem of bad health at this time, seriously, there are people sitting here whose health is not good, or whose parents' health is not good. That's why we have so many parents on a healing prayer list. But even ill health, Gurji said, ill health is made worse by stress. So take care of the body, do what is needed, but then forget about it. How are you, Jivani? Jivani, she came. I'm so glad to see you here, darling. She's very sick a couple of days ago, but she's here. The best thing to do is not to have anxiety or tension about the state of your body. And go beyond it. They all do, and we see the results. They live to 98, they live to 112, they live to 123. Why? Because stress pulls down our immune system. And if our immune system is down, we're going to catch the colds, we're going to get the infections. So the best thing to do is let the body, as much as possible, sometimes you need to see a doctor. Gurji did once in a while, brought his body to the doctor like we bring a car in for servicing. He agreed, bring body in for servicing, very good, get it. A grease job, something. But he knew that it was tension and anxiety causing our health problems, certainly to worsen, because we come with some deficiencies and some weaknesses in the body. Some have it here, some have it in the head, some have it in the stomach. They're weaknesses. So you take care of the body the way you would take care of your car. You turn it over to experts, whomever you find is an expert. But Gurji said after that, if you cannot do anything more on your own, the doctor says this needs rest, this needs different job, don't think about it. Don't think about it. Get your mind off this, because that will break that trance we have, that identifying by habit with this body that keeps changing. That's not what we are. What we are, you'll hear in a minute, is what does not change. The man who is not troubled by these, who remains the same in pain and pleasure, the man or woman who is wise, makes himself or herself fit for eternal life. Dr. Radhakrishnan says, eternal life is different from the survival of death, which is given to every embodied being. Eternal life is the transcendence of life and death. To be subject to grief and sorrow, to be disturbed by the material happenings, to be deflected by them from the path of duty, from why we were born, that has to be traversed. It shows that we are still victims of ignorance, or avidya. Meaning, if we are still subject to grief and sorrow, if we're still disturbed by the happenings in our world, to be deflected by them from the path of duty that has to be traversed shows that we're still victims of ignorance or avidya. And this is a quotation from Imitation. The desires of the senses draw us hither and thither, but when the hour is past, what do they bring us but remorse of conscience and dissipation of spirit? You'll find these teachings in the Gita, in Judaism, in Catholicism, in Buddhism, because they're based on truth. It's truth. It's not different from what we hear. And Guruji said, Vedantic teaching include all religions. They don't, bypass them. They include them, but they go beyond, because Vedantic teachings represent the end of all knowledge. What you're hearing tonight is no more you can know. Past this understanding of not grieving for what is imperishable. We grieved for the 3,000 people lost in the 9/11 attacks. We're hearing now they're already living again in newborn babies, or they're waiting to take embodiment. Nothing happened to them. There was suffering, no doubt, for many of them. But to grieve now, they're happier than we are. As we worry about them, they're released from that because they're how old? 9 years old if they took embodiment right away. It's a wonderful way to view the tragedies in life with understanding. And this is a very difficult verse, but I'll touch upon it as Guruji explained it. Of the non-existent, there's no coming to be. Of the existent, there's no ceasing to be. The conclusion about these two has been perceived by the seers of truth, by the knowers of truth. By non-existent, it means the world of multiplicity or the state of duality. Those who are in a state of duality, there's no coming to be because they don't exist. It's unreal. This is not reality to see differences here. We see different coverings, but there's only one consciousness. There's only one oversoul for all these different souls. So, for us to try and become more as the body-mind entity, there's no coming to be of that. That's not going to happen. Of the existent, meaning of the consciousness, there's no ceasing to be. That never ends. So why are we worried about it? The greatest fear, most common fear, is the fear of dying. Fear of death, the fear of extinction. And the Gita's hitting us over the head. That doesn't happen. So you can eliminate that worry. You don't die. You're never born. So forget about that and forget about worrying about your parents dying. Worry about their suffering, why not? That you can help with by being free of worry yourself. But there's no reason to fear death. And there's certainly no reason to fear being born again. We just continue. We just continue. We continue until there's no need to continue because we have reached the desireless state. Number 17. Oh, I have 10 minutes, good. Know thou that by which all this is pervaded. Know that that by which all this is pervaded is indestructible. Of this immutable being, no one can bring about the destruction. We're speaking of consciousness, which is the power behind everything. That can never be destroyed, and that's what we are. It is said that the bodies of the eternal embodied soul, which is indestructible and incomprehensible, the bodies come to an end. Therefore, finally, he's been laying it all out for Arjuna, and finally he says, therefore, if we put in our language, he'd say, get up and fight. He just says, therefore, O Arjuna, fight. Because it's the bodies of the eternal embodied soul that come to an end. You're not killing the soul. You're doing your duty, and it's already, well, he'll come to this. He says, Lord Krishna, he who thinks that this slays, and he who thinks that this is slain, both of them fail to perceive the truth. This one, meaning Arjuna, the warrior, neither slays, nor is anyone slain. He is never born, nor does he die at any time, nor having once come to be, will he again cease to be. He is unborn, eternal, permanent, and primeval. He is not slain when the body is slain. I wish you could have heard Gurji chant in Sanskrit. So take a deep breath. And now as you breathe out, release all the language, all the words. This will only be 60 seconds. So feel yourself letting go and opening up to this now. Feeling it, perceiving it, imbibing it. Sometimes it only takes 1 minute to reconnect with your real life, your real home. I am that I am. That is our home. Krishna Devi, would you lead us in our traditional prayer? Thank you, Krishna Devi. And if some of you are feeling very high, that you may need a designated driver, take 2 cookies. Chocolate chip is a great way to come back to earth.